Back in the book segment tonight, Inequality in the USA. A new study released by the World Bank says that American income inequality is on the rise, but global income inequality is falling. That means that here, the rich are getting richer while everybody else remains stagnant or in bad shape. Should we be ashamed?
Inequality is not only rising in the land of the American dream, but is perhaps the most unequal country in the world. Now, global income inequality, as I read the report, has not fallen, but risen. Here's why I think Bill, if he read it, never made it past the second sentence. In 2008, the global Gini index is around 70.5%, having declined approximately 2 Gini points over this 20-year period. What is the Gini index, you might say? The Gini index is a measurement of inequality based on income. It's set on a scale from 0 to 100%. 0 being perfect equality, where every person has the same income, and 100% being absolute inequality, where one person has all the income and everyone else has none. This paper puts the global Gini index at 76%. 76%, that seems pretty high, but you might wonder, what's a calibration? It so happens Oxfam recently released a paper on just this, which concludes that chew on that while we finish this up. So wait a minute, I just said the global Gini was at 76%. When it is adjusted for the likely underreporting of top incomes due to these survey methods, the estimate is a much higher global Gini of almost 76%. With such an adjustment, the downward trend of the Gini almost disappears. Alright, so how did we get to this point where the global Gini is at 76%, where that means that the richest 85 people have the same income as the poorest 3.5 billion? What is going on? Perhaps you don't see a problem with all this. If so, this could be from a simple lack of information on the implications of higher and higher inequality, like it was for me.
Good afternoon. Could I have my slides, please? Thanks. I want to talk to you about the impact of inequality, and I want to talk about it in a particular and perhaps rather peculiar context, that of the rich, market, developed economies. This is a chart showing life expectancy up the side, so ranging from 40 to 80 years, and it's plotted against national income per person across the bottom. And you can see that among the developing and emerging economies, as countries get richer, life expectancy improves rapidly. But beyond a certain point of economic development, that relationship is lost, and there's no further benefit to increased material living standards among the rich countries. So those are just those countries on that flat part of the curve. And here in these rich countries, Norway, USA, they're about twice as wealthy as these countries at the other end, Israel, Greece and Portugal. No relationship with life expectancy whatsoever. So we in the rich countries have got to the end of what economic growth can do for us in terms of health and happiness. And we're the first generation for whom that's really true. For all of human history, the best way to improve the quality of human life has been to improve material living standards. That's no longer true for these countries up here.
But if we look within our societies, there are extraordinary social gradients in health, running right across society. Not a difference between the poor and the rest of us. Even the people just below the top have less good health than the people at the top.
And these gradients are true for a whole range of health and social problems, and yet we see no effect of income levels between countries and only within.
So income means something very important within our societies, and nothing between them. The explanation of that paradox is that within our societies we're looking at relative income, or social position, social status, where we are in relation to each other.
It's not about absolute standards of living, it's not about what you can buy, it's about the meaning of income for people and the meaning of their social position. We looked for data that was comparable across these rich market democracies. We put it into an index. It's a very simple index, but it contains data on life expectancy for different countries, the maths and literacy scores of 15-year-olds, infant mortality rates, rates of murder and imprisonment, teenage births, levels of trust, obesity, mental illness, which includes drug and alcohol addiction in the figures we use, and for a few countries, social mobility. Put them all together in an index. If you're higher up on the y-axis, you're doing worse. If you're low down, you're doing better. Again, plotted against national income per person, no relationship whatsoever. Nothing going on. It looks just like that picture I showed you before for life expectancy. But if we plot the exact same index against a measure of income inequality, of distribution rather than averages, that's what we get. Looks more like physics with a bit of measurement error than anything in the social sciences. Countries at the top that are most unequal, UK, New Zealand, Portugal, USA, a higher prevalence of health and social problems. The more equal countries down here, Japan and the Nordics, doing so much better. Now, the measure we're using along the bottom here is the ratio of the incomes of the top fifth of the population to the bottom fifth.
And you see in the more equal countries on the left, the top 20% are about 3.5, 4 times as rich as the bottom 20%. But at the more unequal end, the differences are twice as big. On that measure, we are twice as unequal as some of the other successful market democracies.
We knew that this was politically sensitive stuff, and we didn't want to be accused of having picked our countries to suit our argument. But we thought we'd repeat it all again in an independent setting. So we did it all again for the 50 states of the USA, looking at exactly the same issue. Do the more unequal states have more health and social problems? We created the same index, and again, a statistically significant higher level of health and social problems in the more unequal US states.
In graph after graph, we find that the countries that do worst, whatever the outcome, seem to be the more unequal ones. And the ones that do well seem to be the Nordic countries and Japan. So what we're looking at is general social dysfunction related to inequality. It's not just one or two things that go wrong, it's most things. Another really surprising part of this picture is that it's not just the poor who are affected by inequality. All the way across the social hierarchy. The biggest difference is at the bottom of society, but even at the top, there seems to be a small benefit to being in a more equal society. I think I'm looking and talking about the psychosocial effects of inequality, more to do with feelings of superiority and inferiority, of being valued and devalued, respected and disrespected.
More unequal societies create greater status hierarchies and therefore more status competition, and therefore more consumerism. People work longer hours, they get into debt more because they need to purchase things because status matters more.
It also leads to status insecurity. We worry more about how we're judged and seen by others, whether we're regarded as attractive, clever, all that kind of thing. What all the data I've shown you so far says is the same thing. The average well-being of our societies is not dependent any longer on national income and economic growth. That's very important in poorer countries, but not in the rich developed world. But the differences between us and where we are in relation to each other now matter very much.
The inequality present in a country isn't a static characteristic of national culture or the way things always have been. It's not unchangeable. Countries become more equal, they become less equal, they shift, they move. Places can change, societies can change, and thinking can change. The great social movements of the 20th century haven't been decided upon by politicians or even academics. They've been driven by social movements and people requiring change. We're at an important moment in history where there is space for debate about what our economies should look like, how they should be structured, who they work for. The economic crisis is also an opportunity for real new thinking about how we make economies work for people, and not vice versa.